Let's start with the fifth and count down to the first place, uncovering the stories of the most dangerous, unsanitary, and deadly jobs in the Middle Ages. Number 5. Millers, the dust-choked artisans. We start our journey through medieval times with the millers, the craftsmen whose daily grind was literally just that. The life of a miller was anything but serene. Massive rumbling millstones grinding grain into flour each day of their lives. This dull and repetitive process created clouds of fine dust choking the very air the millers breathed. Day in and day out, these artisans inhaled the particles, leading to a notorious affliction known as mill fever. This common condition among medieval millers was characterized by persistent respiratory problems like shortness of breath and constant coughing, caused by prolonged exposure to fine grain dust. While not always fatal, very often led to chronic health issues and significantly impaired quality and length of life. But the threats didn't end there. The mill's machinery was a constant hazard. The daily terror of working next to gears and stones that could snatch a limb, or worse, your life, in a heartbeat was not a joke. Deaths caused by the machinery and life-lasting disabilities were very common among millers, and if the workers managed to stay healthy and safe next to the machinery, there was additional danger: fires and explosions. These mills, with their extremely flammable flour dust and open flames for light, were tinder boxes waiting to ignite. Number 4. Prostitutes in ports, the harsh life at harbor. Port life wasn't any less grim than a life of a miller, especially for the prostitutes. In these bustling harbors, where sailors and travelers swarmed like bees, the prostitutes faced dangers far beyond the scorn of society. They were at the forefront of the battle against sexually transmitted diseases and were the first to die in plagues. With no real medical knowledge or remedies, their lives were a gamble with every client they encountered. But disease was just one part of their nightmare. Violence, exploitation, and abuse were rampant. At the mercy of pimps, clients, and even the law, these women lived in constant fear. Unlucky for them, prostitutes were very often victims of a serial killer and rapists that were choosing them to commit unimaginable crimes and satisfy their desire to kill but not get caught. Their profession was a dance on the razor's edge of survival. Number 3. Treadmill Operators, the human hamsters. Next, let's turn the wheel of time to the treadmill operators, the human engines of the medieval world. Treadmills were giant wheels, powered not by water or wind, but by the relentless tread of human feet. These operators were living cogs in a machine, tasked with powering mills and water pumps. The work was backbreaking, a never-ending cycle of walking that led to injuries and lifelong ailments. But the horror doesn't stop there. In a cruel twist, this job was so hard and backbreaking that the treadmills were also instruments of punishment. Prisoners and the destitute were forced onto these wheels, sentenced to a torturous cycle of endless walking. Unlike the treadmill operators, they were not allowed to take any breaks. It was a grim metaphor for their own lives, a constant struggle with no respite or destination. The prisoners were forced to operate treadmills until they fainted or died due to the exhaustion or broken bones and internal bleedings. Number 2. Tanners, masters of skin and sorrow. Next on the list we have the stench-filled world of the tanners, masters of turning hide into leather, at the highest cost possible. Tanners worked amidst a cocktail of repulsive odors and dangerous chemicals. Urine, feces, and tannis were their tools, transforming raw hides into leather. These substances were a recipe for disaster. They emitted fumes that scorched the lungs and led to chronic respiratory diseases. Their skin told tales of constant battles with rashes and infections, a testament to their hazardous craft. They were shunned and avoided by the members of the community because everyone knew they carried insane amounts of bacteria and diseases. Unfortunately for the other people, the misery tanners endured didn't just stay within the tannery walls. The toxic runoff from their work poisoned waterways, affecting entire communities. In the grim reality of medieval occupations, tanners paid a high price for their essential craft. with their health and environment as the collateral damage. Often starting working as kids, not many tanners expected to die older than 30 years old. Number 1. Plague Buriers, the grim harvesters of death. Finally, we arrive at the most horrifying job of the Middle Ages, the Plague Buriers, also known as carters or body collectors. During the devastating outbreaks like the Black Death, these individuals faced a task that was as essential as it was nightmarish. They traversed the plague-ridden streets, collecting the countless victims of the epidemic. The sheer volume of the deceased was overwhelming, a never-ending cycle of death that required round-the-clock labor. The risk they bore was unimaginable. Every body they touched could be a ticket to their own demise, as the disease was highly contagious. Yet, they continued, driven by duty or desperation, in a world that had turned into a macabre tableau of suffering and mortality. Unfortunately, it was common that there were not enough people willing to perform this duty. On this occasion, prisoners, often considered expendable, were forced to perform the task of collecting bodies. But beyond the physical danger was the emotional toll. These brave souls were not just laborers, they were the silent witnesses to a society's darkest hours. They carried not just bodies, but the weight of human tragedy, an experience that would leave indelible marks on their psyche.